Is Chad Daybell Lori Vallow's accomplice? Now, Lori Vallow is in jail. Chad Daybell is not. But should he be? Is he Lori Vallow's accomplice? Now, there's new news on that front, and we're going to cover it right here on today's Charlie Crimebuster. Well, hello, welcome to another podcast, Charlie Crimebuster. We're taking a deep dive into Lori Vallow and her missing children. Now, and we've been looking at this mystery, and by the way, this mystery has more twists and turns than, well, the now silent roller coasters of Disney World. Now, our podcasts have included Lori Vallow, Where Are Her Missing Children? And then another one, Lori Vallow, What Was She Thinking? You see, in order to really understand a criminal's mind, you've got to get into it. And maybe in locating her children, it might involve us getting into her mind and to think what she and Chad have been thinking. You can hear all about that on that particular podcast. Now, our podcasts, they are available to you at charliecrimebuster.com, charliecrimebuster.com. And last week, the podcast was Lori Vallow's Spiritual Hitman. Now, who is that hitman, and why do I think she has a hitman? You can see all of that right there, or hear all of that right there at charliecrimebuster.com. We have all of the podcasts in chronological order, and this is going to be our fourth one. In this one, we're talking about Lori Vallow's accomplice. Is it Chad Daybell? Now, also, there's a place for you to subscribe on the podcast, or to the podcast, if you have not already. And if you happen to have some thoughts, maybe some questions or suggestions, particularly about this case or any other, I would love for you to reach out to us. You can reach me personally at charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you, and all of you that are out there, we do appreciate so much you taking a moment to go to Facebook and follow us there, on Twitter and all the other social platforms that you can. Now, there is new news released this week that puts Chad right in the middle of things, maybe much earlier than you might think. We're going to cover that in a moment, but first, let's take a moment to introduce you to Chad Daybell. Now, Chad Daybell is Lori Vallow's fifth husband. He is a leader of a spiritual cult-like doomsday group, which happens to be a splinter off of the Church of the Latter-day Saints. But in fact, the Mormon Church now has excommunicated Chad for his far-out spiritual beliefs. It appears that according to him and Lori, they are here now to help lead the 144,000 righteous people who will reign with Christ at his second coming, and will help lead them through the tribulation. Now, by the way, according to them, this is all scheduled to take place in July of 2020. That's July of 2020 of this year. And Chad Daybell married Lori Vallow just 11 days after burying his own late wife, who died of mysterious causes. Now, Chad has authored over 25 books on doomsday preparations, and police now have covered emails where Lori and him communicated. They communicated about 7 special missions from God. That includes preparing for doomsday. Now remember, Lori was reported to have said to her fourth husband that if he got in the way of her mission from God, she would murder him. She would take him out. And she even had an angel to help with the body. Now, we covered that part in last week's podcast, Lori Vallow's Hitman. So here is this spiritual doomsday leader, whose wife died of mysterious circumstances. He inherited life insurance, which, by the way, he just happened to increase prior to her death. And then he marries his spiritual partner now, his spiritual partner in the special missions that they have been called to do. He married her just 11 days after. Now, the question is he her accomplice? Is he her accomplice in the case of the missing children? Is he her accomplice in the alleged death of her fourth husband, Charles Vallow? Is he her accomplice in the attempted murder of Lori's own niece, ex-husband Brandon? Is he the accomplice in the attempted murder of his late wife, who was shot at with a masked man with a gun that malfunctioned? And at last, is he her accomplice in the mysterious death of his wife just days later? He is not arrested, but new news released this week. Certainly brings him into this case in ways that few people even knew about. And we're going to cover that. We're going to cover that in just a moment. But first, it is time that we recognize our courageous citizen of the week. Our courageous citizen of the week comes to us from Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was on January the 11th. It seems that a homeowner's son was asleep in the living room when he was awoken by the family dogs barking at a man on the porch. The man demanded to see his fiancée, but was told that he had the wrong house and he needed to leave. But instead, the man then broke into the family's car. Then he tried to kick in the back door. Now, the homeowner's son warned the man multiple times that he was armed and that he would shoot him if he stepped foot in the house. Nonetheless, the man barged inside, and true to his word, the son shot and wounded the man, who retreated and then was later arrested. So here's a young man that was protecting his home from who knows what, this maniac that was breaking into his home. And that, my friend, is our Charlie Crimebuster Courageous Hero of the Week. Real people protecting themselves and their loved ones. We call them Charlie Crimebusters Courageous Heroes. Charlie Crimebusters Courageous Heroes. Now, our feature story this week is about Lori Vallow, Daybell's new husband, Chad Daybell, who married her about 11 days after he buried his own wife. And we're asked the question, is he an accomplice of Lori Vallow in the suspected crimes that she could be a part of, including her missing children? And just this week, news was released about, now get this, a secretive email that Lori sent Chad. It is called the latest clue in the investigation of the doomsday couple, Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. And it comes in the form of a weird email sent in her previous husband's name, just shortly before he was shot dead. You see, investigators want to question Vallow and Daybell about the June 29th message as they try to put together the pieces of a puzzle that now includes 2 dead spouses, 2 missing children, and an obsession with doomsday and near-death experiences. This is what KSL-TV reported. You see, Charles Vallow, 62 years of age, was killed by his wife's brother, Alex Cox, during what was initially described as a domestic dispute on July the 11th in Chandler, Arizona. Now, 2 weeks earlier, this is the new news that's come to focus. 2 weeks earlier, Charles wrote an email to another brother-in-law, Adam Cox. And in this email, he claimed that Lori had created an email account in his name. And he used that email account in his name, Charles, to invite Daybell, who lived in Idaho, to visit him in Arizona. He said, quote, "I would gladly fly you down here early next week." That's what the bogus invite read that was really written by Lori in Charles's name. Quote, "You could stay in our guest room like before. I hate to take you away from your family, but I would definitely make it worth your time." Now, when Charles got wind of the email, he questioned Lori about it, but he got no answers. He goes on to say in this email to his brother-in-law, "I'm not sure of the relationship with her and Chad Daybell, but they're up to something. She will not explain it. And he wrote that to Adam Cox, according to KSL. Now, it is difficult to believe that this secretive fake email account that Lori had put under the name of her now dead husband was unknown. It's just hard to believe that was unknown to Chad Daybell, her current husband. Surely, his deceased wife, who was an accountant and very much involved with their book business, could have access to her husband's email. And this was a way that Lori could communicate with him without his wife having knowledge of any arrangement whatsoever. Now, we do not know if Charles did contact Chad's wife about this arrangement. He certainly told his brother-in-law that he intended to. He said that he had from Chad's website her cell phone number and her email address, and he was going to contact them. But we do not know at this point if he did or did not contact Chad's wife about this secretive email and arrangement. We do not know if he did before he was killed by Lori's brother, Alex Cox. And yet there is yet other new news now that has come up this week that puts Chad Daybell right into the middle of all these things, including the attempted murder of Brandon and the missing children. We're going to get to that in a moment, but first, wait a minute. What is that I hear? Well, there's that crazy music, and that means it's time for Charlie Crime Buster's Crazy Crook of the Week. We try to share a crazy crook story with you in just about every podcast, because some of the news and some of the stuff that we cover is pretty heavy, pretty serious. So we try to lighten the load a little bit for us to take a breath and then get back to the serious stuff. This one comes to us from Germany, another country, and it is a doozy. You see, it seems that a German bank robber, well, he decided to send some mocking emails to local police. He would ridicule their efforts to arrest him. First, he let them know that, well, you got my age wrong, you got my build wrong, and my accent is wrong. Then he corrected their announcement that he had escaped on foot. No, he said, I didn't escape on foot, I had a getaway car. Well, the cops, they got the last word, though, and they did get the last laugh, because after he sent this email, well, they arrested him a few hours later. You got it. They used his email to trace him. That comes to us from Reuters. Yep, he was smart enough to taunt them, but not smart enough to get away with it. And that, my friend, is Charlie Crimebuster's Dumb Crook of the Week. Now, back to our feature story. Lori Vallow. Is Lori Vallow's fifth husband, Chad Daybell, her accomplice? You see, it seems now that there is no shortage of questions that police want to ask Lori, 46 years of age, and Chad, 51, starting with the location of Tylee and JJ. You see, Tylee and JJ were the only other witness to her fourth husband, Charles's, death. Idaho police say that Lori refused to cooperate with the search for the children, that she lied about their whereabouts, took off to Hawaii with Chad when they started investigating. And a judge arrested her for desertion and contempt, and she has already been extradited now from Hawaii to Idaho to face those charges. Her new husband also left Hawaii and is now already in Idaho. You see, police now have reopened the investigation into Tammy Daybell's October the 19th death. They exhumed her body, and they're taking another look now at Charles Vallow's killing and the unexplained December death of Alex Cox. And they're also investigating an October incident in which someone driving Charles' car, he was already deceased, but somebody driving his car took a shot at Brandon Bordox, the estranged husband of Lori's niece. Now take notice that regarding that shot at Brandon, the estranged husband of Lori's niece, because you might just want to ask yourself, what was Chad Daybell doing around the time someone took a shot at the ex-husband of Lori's niece, who, by the way, he had a $1 million life insurance on him. Because there's some other new news now that has come up regarding that Chad could have been in the middle of it all, way back around the time when the children were out of sight and no doubt missing. In fact, it was around the same time that Brandon was shot at. You see, we now have evidence that Chad Daybell was involved in working with Lori Vallow. This was mere weeks before Chad's own now deceased wife reported someone shooting at her with some sort of gun that had misfired. But first, let me give you a brief timeline of events that happened at the end of this past summer and past fall. You see, it was in June that Melanie Brodock, she demanded a divorce from Brandon, her husband of 11 years. And this was after she had gotten involved with the same doomsday group of Lori and Chad. And so we go on with the timeline now. On July the 11th, some media reports said the 12th, so on about July the 11th, Lori's fourth husband was shot to death by her brother Alex Cox, who claimed that it was self-defense. And then in July, Lori returned little JJ's service dog after she had attempted to sell the dog. And then on August the 10th, JJ's grandmother last had contact with JJ for less than a minute on Facebook. And near the end of September, Lori, Tylee, and JJ moved to Rexburg, Idaho. And October the 2nd, Brandon was shot at in Gilbert, Arizona, and he believes that was by Alex Cox. On October the 9th, just 7 days after that, someone in a ski mask took shots at Brad Daybell's wife with some sort of gun that had misfired. And 10 or 11 days after, Tammy, we find that Brad's wife was found dead. 2 weeks later, Chad and Lori marry and move to Hawaii. Now, Tammy was not Brad's wife, but Tammy was Chad's wife, who was found dead. And 2 weeks later, Chad and Lori marry and move to Hawaii. And now, as you now know, she was arrested for child desertion, violation of court order to produce her children. And now we have news, brand new news that puts Chad into the picture. Right about that time that Brandon was shot at, when it was apparent that the children had been missing. And this comes to us, ladies and gentlemen, from eastidahonews.com. According to the news, there's enhanced higher quality of surveillance footage that appears to answer questions about who visited Lori Vallow Daybell's storage unit in Rexburg last year. You see, this video may provide insights into the disappearance of her children, Joshua and Tylee, who have been missing since September. Lori, is in Madison County Jail on a $1 million bail, charged with 2 counts of felony child desertion and non-support of children, along with some misdemeanors. You see, she had rented a unit at Self Storage Plus in Rexburg on October the 1st. And over the next 2 months, she and sometimes 1 or 2 men visited the locker 10 times. Now, personal belongings were put into the storage. It included children's items, a photo album, blankets featuring pictures of the children, and bikes and scooters. Now, the big question is, who was with her? Who was with her when she visited the facility on October the 2nd? Now, remember, this is only 7 days before someone attempted to shoot at Chad's wife, and 17 days before she was found dead. And meanwhile, in Arizona that very morning, in Gilbert, Brandon, he was shot at while driving home from the gym. At that time, he was married to Lori's niece, Melanie. Court documents show that he had a large life insurance policy and assets totaling over $1 million. Now, that bullet missed Brandon's head by inches. And police said the person who shot at him was driving a Jeep registered to Charles Vallow, Lori's former husband. Now, at this point, Vallow had been dead for nearly 3 months. Tylee had routinely drove the Jeep, but she too had been missing for about a month. Rich Robertson, a private investigator from Arizona, said police had strong evidence that Alex Cox, Daybell's brother, was the driver and may have been the one who took the shot. Arizona police have not confirmed who they believe was driving the Jeep when the shooting occurred. Now, of course, Melanie, she's denied she had anything to do with the attempt, and her lawyers say that Cox could not have been in Arizona and Idaho at the same time. But here is what we see on the video of the Rexburg storage unit that day. Surveillance video shows, now get this, shows Daybell driving into the business in her blue Nissan with a man that the eastidahonews.com originally thought was Alex Cox, her brother. But get this, A closer look at enhanced video recently obtained by East Idaho News shows it wasn't Cox, but Chad Daybell. That's right, Chad Daybell, her new husband. Base this on the man's walk, looks, and mannerisms. Timestamps on the video show that the car arrived around 1:25 p.m., but the owner says clocks were off by 1 hour, so Lori actually pulled in at 2:25 p.m. She made her way to the door of the building where her unit was, and 2 minutes later, at 2:27, she got out of the vehicle with a man that is now believed to be Chad. At 2:29, he pulled a tire out of the back of the vehicle and rolled it into the storage unit. 1 minute later, he and Lori carried what appears to be a removable rear car seat together. They put it in the locker, they shut the door, and they left the facility at 2:32 p.m. That entire visit was around 7 minutes. Then the next day, surveillance footage shows a second man visiting the storage unit back in Idaho with Lori around 2:11 p.m. This man, more than likely Cox, well, he walked differently than Chad and carries the tire out rather than rolling it. He also carries the car seat by himself rather than working with her like the day before. You see, originally it was thought that the vehicle seat could be a tote with something hanging over the end, but enhanced footage appears to clear up the confusion. And it's unknown where Lori and Cox took the seat and tire after leaving the storage facility. Now, the tire and seat, they are noteworthy because many Jeeps have spare tires on the back door, and the rear window will not open if the tire is attached. When the tire is off, the window's open. It's possible the tire and seat put into storage until the day of the shooting were from the Jeep. Cox could have been the driver when Brandon was shot at. Now, that wasn't the only time that Cox appeared at the Self-Storage Plus. On October the 6th, he returned by himself with his silver pickup truck. He went back 5 times that month, including a visit on the 28th, with a man, again, that appeared to be Chad. Now, Chad's former wife, Tammy, then had died 9 days earlier, and her funeral was held on October the 22nd. Cox and Daybell stayed 6 minutes. They dropped off bikes and other items. Now, Cox, unfortunately, can't comment on his visits to the unit because he died suddenly in December, and his death, okay, it's also still under investigation. You see, the last time anyone visited the storage locker was November the 24th, and that, again, was Lori and Chad Daybell, who had returned from Idaho from their honeymoon. They came for 4 minutes, left personal belongings of J.J. and Ty Lee. They never returned. And now Rexburg police, well, they've seized all the items from that unit. Well, with this news account, there comes all sort of questions. Why is Chad there even before his wife dies? Why did Chad participate in this email scheme, even when Lori was married and he was as well? Why was he not interested in an autopsy on his wife when she was perfectly healthy before she died? Why did he marry another in a mere 2 weeks? One could say, well, that just means he's in an affair with Lori, and while not moral, it's not illegal. But then you take his actions while her own children are missing. We do know that he told someone that Lori had no minor children. Then he and Lori together told someone that Ty Lee had passed away back in 2017. My question to you is, why the lies? Now, I will say that only on one occasion he did tell one news outlet that the children are safe. But let me ask you, does that mean that they're somewhere physically safe on this earth? Or does he consider them safe with God in eternity? You see, it boils down to this for me. Lori and Chad may truly believe that they are to help Christ with 144,000 during the coming tribulation, which they say that day is in July of 2020. And if they do believe that, then I got to tell you, folks, this new virus, well, it must solidify their belief for them. For he had written about a worldwide disease, pandemic in nature. And my point is this. If they believe that he said that his wife passed peacefully in the hands of God, let me ask you, is it not a far stretch to allegedly believe that they also made sure that the children passed peacefully in the hands of God? Lori was quoted as saying that the children would be better off. They would be better off driven off of a cliff than having to live through the tribulation. And now, with loose ends taken care of. Neither the children or his late wife will have to suffer through the tribulation in earthly bodies. After all, they will be with him again soon in what they say is their resurrected bodies. You see now, Chad and Lori can get on to their 7 missions from God together in helping Christ during the end of time, coming in a few months, according to them. Now, since this case is pending, we do not have all the information that the police have as they put their case together. However, it is difficult for me to see Chad as an innocent bystander in all of this. For even now, the circumstantial evidence is pretty strong. Now, as I've explained before, I may go to sleep at night after hearing the weather report that there'll be 10 inches of snow falling by the morning. I go to sleep at night. I do not see the snow fall. I do not witness it. But I do have circumstantial evidence that it indeed happened, especially when I wake up in the morning with 10 inches of snow on the ground. Now, there is certainly reasonable suspicion that Chad is an accomplice in all that Lori Vallow and her brother was into in this complex, sad, serious case. The only question is, was he an accomplice with her or after the fact? Well, hopefully, time will tell. This is one of those times which I hope with all my heart that my gut feelings are wrong about this case, but I'm not holding my breath. Now, we always try to share some safety lessons relating to our podcasts. And one thing we can take from this is that not only should we be protecting our bodies from harm, but we should also protect our minds and our thoughts as well. For there are all kinds of con people out there. Wives and husbands are conned domestically, thinking that they have a nice guy or girl for their partner, only to find they get married to a con man filled with violence and rage. There are people who will con you out of your money with scams that sound too good to be true, and mostly are exactly that, too good to be true. And there are religious con men as well. The Jim Jones of this world, the Waco, Texas brand compound. There were 26 children died in April of 1993. The terrorists who fly into the New York towers, killing thousands because they've been conned into thinking that they were doing God's work. Well, we should guard ourselves from these who would twist goodness into evil, hiding it under the disguise of God. And if somehow it comes out that people were killed and these children were missing from twisted religious views, then my, how sad that would be. So, my friend, our message is simple. Be alert. Be alert, be safe. Be alert from both physical and mental danger. For the life you save, it may well be your very own.